Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and welcome to my first of 3 Shapespeare videos here in 2024. In this video, I'm going to be talking about one of Shakespeare's first plays, Titus Andronicus. This is my third or fourth time reading Titus. I've made a video on it in the past. Now, I did not go back and watch that video. I did not track down my notes from that previous video, and so I have no idea what I took note of in that reading and discussed in that video. So there's a possibility, I suppose, that I might be just repeating myself. So if that's the case, I apologize. The first thing that we see in the play is Saturninus flattering his followers as a means to getting his way. And what this means, essentially, is that we have the death of an emperor occasioning ass-kissing and entitlement rather than grief and remembrance. The very first situation that we encounter is something that's disturbing, right? It's not upsetting. Like we didn't know the emperor. We're not going to be moved by his death because we spent 2 previous acts, watching him whittle on the front porch or what have you, and listening to him spin yarns about his youth. We're not going to be moved by his death or anything like this. But the situation itself is disturbing. That his sons, particularly Saturninus, seem not to give a damn that he's gone, right? Seem to look at his death as just a window of opportunity. We have Titus exacting a kind of eye for an eye with one of the children of Tamara, Queen of the Goths, and so they take one of her sons away and kill him. And the irony is that this whole scene, right, with the 2 brothers kind of currying the favor of the populace, and Titus kind of putting the finishing touches on the war or what have you that has just happened with the execution of one of Tamara's sons. This is all happening in close proximity to, or just outside of the burial chamber, where these quote unquote great men of Rome have been laid to rest. So we have this reverential space that finds itself entertaining violence that feels capricious and impulsive. And there's something disgusting about that, I suppose, which I think Shakespeare is aware of and wants us to think about. So the next little section in my notes here that I have taken, so I have a kind of bullet point that I wrote down called Conditions That Amplify Horror. And I've made note of 2 things in particular. So one, the first thing that I wrote down was semantics. We're looking at Act 1, Scene 1, lines 404 through 407. So Saturninus has said, hey, I want Lavinia to be my wife. Lavinia is going to be my queen. Lavinia is Titus's daughter. And what he may or may not know, or may or may not care about, is the fact that Bassianus, his brother, is Lavinia's betrothed. And so they're already engaged. Bassianus essentially, tells Saturninus in front of everyone, "Oh no, that's not going to happen, man. She's mine. I am hers. We belong to one another." And Saturninus, right? The petulant Saturninus says, "Traitor! If Rome have law or we have power, thou and thy faction shall repent this rape." To which Bassianus then says, "Rape, quote unquote," he said, "rape, you call it, my lord, to seize my own, my true betrothed love, and now my wife." Okay? And So again, right? So we have Saturninus redefining rape according to his own whims or wishes. And this is something that we see in politics a great deal today, where politicians will be like, "Well, I want this word to mean X instead of Y, or Y instead of Z." And what happens when they do that is they can get away with a good deal more. Here's Saturninus assigning a new definition to rape, something that has nothing to do with rape, right? I mean, Bassianus was engaged to this woman, is married to this woman now, and it's completely above board. It's lawful. It's honorable. And it has nothing to do with rape, right? And so what I've written down in my notes is when something self-evidently horrific, like rape, sees its definition become slippery and subject to whim, it more easily evades censure or condemnation. So we could look at torture, the word torture, okay, and what America did with that word, what America's kind of political machine did with the word torture after 9/11, and it's like, oh no, so this thing that we're doing with these people that we've captured, this is not torture. They told us, right? This is enhanced interrogation. Okay, interrogation is not such a bad thing. It's just a questionnaire, really, right? What else is interrogation, if not a series of questions? And it's enhanced interrogation, right? It's interrogation with just a little something extra, a little pinch of something. No pun intended. When politicians do that, when they take things that are unquestionably evil, like rape, like torture, and they start playing with the meanings of them, and they start planting the seeds of other possible ways of looking at them, then it becomes difficult to insist that they be held to fixed definitions. And so even though we haven't yet seen actual rape in the play that's coming, it speaks volumes that Saturninus has begun playing with that definition and trying to plant different ideas about what it constitutes in the reader's mind, and also in the minds of the people gathered there. The second thing that I've written down, that is a condition that amplifies horror, is ultimatum. And so I'm going to look at Act 2, Scene 3, lines 112 through 116, and 166 to 167. So we have Tamara, right, evil Tamara, with her sons, Chiron and Demetrius. They have essentially kind of captured Lavinia and Bassianus. And the plan is for them to kill Bassianus, and then to rape and mutilate Lavinia. And Tamara, who along with Aaron is kind of overseeing this whole thing, right? I mean, Tamara has earlier told Saturninus that she'll find a day to massacre them all. She tells him. And here we have Tamara with her sons, Chiron and Demetrius, and she says to them, "Revenge it as you love your mother's life, or be ye not henceforth called my children." So you will do this thing, if you're my kids, right? If you grow a conscience all of a sudden, then you shall not call yourself my children. Revenge it as you love your mother's life, or be ye not henceforth called my children. To which Demetrius says, "This is a witness that I am thy son." He stabs Bassianus. Tamara says, "Therefore away with her, and use her as you will. The worse to her, the better loved of me." Right? So essentially, telling them, the more pain you can cause her, the deeper the well of suffering in which you can leave her, the greater, the more pronounced your love for me will prove itself to be. And there's something so dark about that, man. There's something so dark about that. So the next thing I wanted to look at here is this idea of nature versus nurture. All right, are people... Is Tamara, for instance, is she the way she is because that is just her nature, or were the circumstances of her having been raised, having come into womanhood, such that that she became monstrous, right? We've already seen a monstrous thing happen to her. She pleads for the life of her son in Act 1. Titus ignores her and orders her son to be put to death. So we know that monstrous things have happened to her. But again, to what extent are people the way they are from birth, right? To what extent is it all just coded and programmed in our brain from the very beginning? Or are we products of how we're raised, right? Are the horrifying things that we do as human beings a result of who we've been shaped to be by our parents, by our circumstances, by our surroundings, by our friendships. And this, I mean, these are vital questions even today, right? I mean, we just had another school shooting in this country, right? 2 teachers and 2 students killed. I think 9 other people injured. A 14-year-old boy did this thing. I'm 14 years old. When I was 14 years old, I was spending all of my free time playing Super Mario Brothers. It seems unthinkable, and yet it keeps happening, right? Is it nature or is it nurture, right? By nurture, I mean a failure to nurture. And this is a question that Shakespeare has, he was obsessed with throughout his career, right? Again, this is an early play, Titus Andronicus. It's a very early play. But I'm going to look at first Act 3, Scene 1, lines 54 through 56. Titus is addressing his son. O happy man, they have befriended thee. Why, foolish Lucius, dost thou not perceive that Rome is but a wilderness of tigers? Tigers must prey, and Rome affords no prey but me and mine. Right? So all of these tragic things that have happened to Titus and his family, particularly himself and his daughter, Lavinia, he says Rome is but a wilderness of tigers, and tigers must prey. That is their nature. Okay, they are there to devour whatever is weak around them, whatever has been compromised around them. Right, so that's the nature of a tiger. And then in Act 5, Scene 1, lines 81 through 85. So Aaron, Tamara's, her lover boy, I guess we can say, her little bit on the side, right? Aaron the Moor, Tamara has given birth to a baby with skin color not her own. Right, Tamara is white skinned, and Aaron, being a Moor, is black skinned or brown skinned, and the newborn is brown skinned, and Aaron is trying to get away with this child. Now, Aaron is a bad dude. He's every bit as bad as Tamara, if not worse. He's got a terrific speech in this play where, he talks about how he not only doesn't repent for the bad things that he's done, for the evil acts that he's committed. He wishes that he had enough time in his life to do 10,000 more of these things and worse. He is really, really bad news. But anyway, they capture him. He's got the baby with him, and he is trying to persuade Lucius, Titus's son, to spare the baby, right? Because Lucius is like, hang the baby from the tree. because that's just what kind of play this is. There's an awful lot of grotesque violence in this play. But Aaron says to him, he says, "For that I know an idiot holds his bauble for a god, and keeps the oath which by that god he swears. To that I'll urge him. And therefore thou shalt vow by that same god, what god soe'er it be, that thou adorest and hast in reverence, to save my boy, to nourish and bring him up, or else I will discover naught to thee." I won't tell you these things that you want to know about what's happened in your family's recent history and how I've orchestrated it all. He's essentially making Lucius promise that he'll spare the life of the baby, essentially bring him up as his own. So again, right, it begs this question: can the baby of Aaron, who has been born to two parents who are demonstrably evil, will that baby inherit their characteristics? Okay, the characteristics of their souls, or can that baby be brought up in circumstances and by parents who approach its raising in such a way that the baby will in fact be nurtured, will be nourished? And what I find really interesting about this is that, so we tend to think of Aaron as anticipating the character of Iago in Othello. Now, Othello will be written 10 to 12 years after Titus Andronicus. Iago is one of the great villains of all time, right? A character who sets in motion the machinery of evil for the sake of doing it and no other reason, right? I mean, he wants to see people suffer because he delights in it somehow. And we tend to think of Aaron as a kind of precursor to Iago. But this passage where Aaron is trying to persuade Lucius to take his son, to spare his son, to raise his son, it makes me wonder if Aaron isn't also anticipating the character of Sycorax from The Tempest, right? The next play that I'm going to be reading, which is a play that comes toward the end of Shakespeare's career, and where Titus Andronicus is focused so much on revenge. At one point, Tamara even dresses as Revenge with a capital R, right, and passes herself off as Revenge, come up from the underworld. The Tempest is the other side of the coin from Titus, right? This play is concerned with revenge. That play is concerned with grace, with forgiveness, with the setting aside of the impulse for revenge. But in that play we have Caliban, and there are all of these questions surrounding Caliban, right? Is Caliban who he is because he was the son of a witch, Sycorax? Is he monstrous because it is his nature to be monstrous? Or has he been made monstrous through the conditions of his raising, right? Having been made a slave by Prospero. To what extent is this responsible for who he is, and to what extent is that responsible for who he is? So Aaron feels to me like a kind of template for Sycorax in The Tempest, and his baby a kind of template for Caliban. Maybe I'm crazy, I don't know, but yeah. Anyway, the last thing that I wanted to talk about here is how Rome in Titus Andronicus, right, it presents as stately, it presents as dignified, as a kind of beacon, as a kind of light, but in reality it is diseased, and the ruins of the human beings in the play, right? Titus has one hand. His hand is chopped off. Lavinia's hands are chopped off. Her tongue is cut out. The ruins of the human beings in the play are metaphors for what's happening with the soul of Rome. One of the things in Titus Andronicus that tells us, that communicates to us that Rome is diseased, that Rome is spiritually in ruins, is how we have these kind of policies of disproportionate violence right? So at one point, a clown delivers a message to Saturninus, and the message displeases Saturninus, and so he orders the clown to be executed. And then we find out that the message was that Titus has accused Saturninus of wrongfully killing Titus's sons, right? So Saturninus was led to believe that his brother Bassianus was killed, not by Chiron and Demetrius, but was killed by two of Titus's sons, right? They were framed, essentially. Titus is calling him out on that, right? He gives this message to be delivered to Saturninus and says, you have abused me and my family by wrongfully killing my children. And Saturninus is like, well, I'm offended that you say that, and so I'm going to have you killed, right? It's disproportionate. It's completely out of joint as a response, right? The idea that someone should be brought in and executed for having, held someone accountable for something that they perceive that person to have done. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. And again, we see this all the time in the world today, right? So 9/11 happens, and then the United States goes like completely radically overboard in its response. And we see it now, right? I mean, so America set that precedent with Israel. And so we have Hamas doing what it did last October. And killing X number of people and taking X number of hostages, and then Israel's completely out of proportion response to that, right? And it doesn't make any. There's no logic to this at all. To disproportionate responses, there's no logic to it at all. These things are completely based on or have their roots in a compulsion for revenge, right? In an emotional, in being triggered emotionally, right? Checking reason at the door. And any state, any society, any civilization, a mark of its health as a civilization, as a society, as a state, is the degree to which it employs its reason, its rationality, its logic in its responses to things that have been done to it. Throughout history, I mean, we see societies and governments just dropping the ball on them and just failing utterly to do what logic and reason dictate. Can it be recovered, right? And that's the thing. Like we see at the very end of this play, there's this question: can it be restored? Right. So in Act 5, Scene 3, lines 69 through 71. The last thing I marked here, we have Marcus, Titus's brother. After almost everybody's dead. It's like the end of Hamlet in this way. Marcus says, "You sad-faced men, people and sons of Rome, by uproars severed as a flight of fowl, scattered by winds and high tempestuous gusts, oh, let me teach you how to knit again this scattered corn into one mutual sheaf, these broken limbs again into one body." Right? So Marcus seems to believe that it can, that Rome can be restored, right? That we can once again as a people learn to use our reason, learn to use our logic, learn to insist upon proportionate responses to things that are done to us. So what Marcus does is he invites the public who have determined that they want Lucius, the son of Titus, to be their new emperor. He invites them to pass judgment on them and what they have done to Saturninus and to Tamara, to see if it was out of proportion in relation to what those people had done to the Andronicus family. He says, show us wherein, and from the place where you behold us pleading the poor remainder of Andronici, will hand in hand all headlong hurl ourselves, and on the ragged stones beat forth our souls, and make a mutual closure of our house. Speak, Romans, speak, and if you say we shall, lo, hand in hand, Lucius and I will fall. If you say that we overstepped in our response to what has been done to us, to what was done to Lavinia and her husband and Titus himself, if you believe that we went too far, tell us, and we will here make an end of our family, right? And let you move forward without us. So I find that very interesting, right? This is not something. It's not in and of itself the solution to restoring and renewing a society, but it has to be part of it, right? It has to be part of it. The will of the people. I think it's beautiful that the play kind of ends with the survivors of all of this chaos and tragedy taking an important step and involving the people who have been on the outside looking in, the people who've been on the periphery, making them central to what will happen moving forward in the healing of this place, in the healing of Rome. Yeah, it's kind of a beautiful thing. So anyway, that's all I've got to say really about Titus. Sorry, this was a little bit all over the place. Yeah, I'm out of practice, but yeah, it was fun rereading this and putting my thoughts together as much as can be done, I suppose. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a video on The Tempest. If you read Titus along with me, let me know your thoughts down below. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys again in a couple of weeks. So, adios.